Hello everyone, I'm here to do my wrap-up for the month of June. I read 9 books in the month of June, 2 of which were audiobooks and the rest were normal books, let's say. And the first one was an audiobook and it's Don't Let It Break You by Jenny Evans. And this one is a memoir. It was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction and I heard a lot of things, good things about it from there. And it's basically about this woman that was raped when she was very young, and the man that raped her was a very famous man, and so there were a lot of consequences for her when she came forward eventually to the police. It took her a few years to do so, but she eventually did, and then the tabloids were all over the place. So it's obviously about how men have the power and all of that, but it's also about sensational journalism and reporting and how the paparazzis get the information and the lack of privacy and the corruption within all that system of reporting, more than about the rapes themselves, which also was about, and her life is really really hard for the rape and for other reasons, and so there was a lot of that, but her life has been dedicated, and this book is narrating her struggles with the police and their connection with the journalist and how all of that affected her life massively. And I think it was very well done. I agree with all the people that said this was really good. I think it is, and it makes you angry, which is, I think, the point of the book, because I have not seen people talk about that side of reporting a rape, especially when it's a famous person behind it. So yeah, very very interesting. The next book that I finished was Ordinary Saints by Niamh Nimaldane. I read this for my book club, and this follows a lesbian woman from Ireland that lives in London, and her brother died when she was young, and he was also fairly young. He was, I think, 18, 20, and she was 12, 13, and he was studying to be a priest, and when he died, he basically her parents wanted him to become a saint, and at the point that we meet her in the book is the church has accepted the plea and they're going through the process. This is a very interesting book. It's very humorous, the way that she talks and the way that the situation is set up. It almost feels like a caricature, but at the same time it talks very deeply about religion. It talks very deeply about the relationship between religion and LGBTQ communities and how harmful those connections are, but also it talks about the process of someone becoming a saint, especially when it's not that far off from the time that he died. There's things like, once if he becomes a saint, all his possessions will be spread around the world in different churches, and his body will be taken out of the ground, and his body parts will also be distributed among different churches, while his sister and parents are still alive, which is very weird. Let's be honest, that is very very weird, and I never thought about that. And yeah, a lot of people in the book and outside the book question whoa, there's still people that become saints, and apparently it's repeated several times in the book that the last 3 popes have made more saints than everyone else, every other pope ever combined, and that's kind of because the church is trying to make being a saint cool or something, whatever. I thought that the politics of it and the discussions around were very very interesting, and for me I think it was also interesting because even though I didn't grow up religious, I am from Spain, and Catholicism is the main religion in Spain, and it's also in Ireland. So I had a little bit more of a general concept of the things that were going on, just because that's the culture I grew up in as well. It's not like I wasn't part of any religion, but like society around me was not based in any other religion. It was the same. So I like things like rituals and stuff I was fairly familiar with in most of the cases. And yeah, I thought it was a very fun, quirky book while still being serious and tackling some very deep things in it, and I really enjoyed it, and I really recommend. The book that I finished was the other audiobook, and that's Small Boat by Vincent Delacroix. This was nominated for the International Book Fair a few years ago, and it's about we're basically following a woman that works for the not border patrol, but like the people that send boats to rescue other boats in the waters of France, and she works in the area around the English Strait Canal, where they cross from France to England, and we follow her because she was on duty when this little boat sank with a lot of immigrants that were there trying to cross, and that is something that happens fairly often. People are desperate enough that they want to cross to the UK because they think the conditions there are better, because they have more contacts there that can help them, and so they go into smugglers and they put them in these little rafts that have no power, and they have way too many people, and that just send them to the sea in weather that is normally not good weather for that. And so in this case that happened, and the immigrants called the boats patrol thing to ask for help when they were clearly sinking, and this is the woman that responded, and she didn't send anybody because they were in English waters at that point. The wind had pushed them into English waters, and so she's in this, they are investigating the case. They think that they want her to think that she's responsible for the death of these people, and I mean, she kind of has a part to play, of course, but there is also a lot of other questions that there are around it, like why this particular boat, and you don't care about all of the other boats that sank also, and if you care so much about the immigrants, why didn't you just fix the issues so that they don't have to do these things? And she also says, I was treated like everybody else, and the fact that they were trying to make her feel like she was biased, but she didn't feel like she was biased. She was just doing the job that she was meant to do. So there was a whole discussion around that. It's a really, really small book, and it's heartbreaking, and she's not a likable character, but she has some good points about where is actually the blame. Is the blame from the people that didn't send the boats, even though they could have, or is it the blame on the people that put these immigrants in that situation in the first place? Yeah, it's a whole very interesting conversation, and I enjoyed it. I think it was very smart. I'm not sure I would say I enjoyed the book per se, but I admire it and I appreciate it, so still very good book. And the next book that I read, which I don't have a copy of because it had to go back to the library, was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. That is also for my book club for this month, and this follows two women who are eventually fall in love with each other, and they both work at NASA. And at the very beginning of the book, we know that one of them is in space and one of them is on on land, and something else happened in space, and the situation is very critical. And then we go back and forth between the critical situation in the spaceship and the what happened before, leading to them being in this situation. And it has a lot to say about the way that women were treated in NASA. It's set in the, I think, 50s, 60s, around that. And so it talks about women in this kind of environment, which it's quite relevant, and also it's quite, if it's true, it's quite impressive that they had such a program in the 50s and 60s to put so many of these women in these positions, which is almost more than what we have now. So that was interesting. And then it's also, I really, the part that I really enjoy the most is the connection between Jane, one of these women, and her niece. So her sister got pregnant when she was very young, and once the baby came, they kind of have co-parent that child, and I really love those sections the most, and the relationship between the aunt and the kid was amazing and infuriating at times, and I think that was my favorite part. The relationship between the two of them was also cute, and the part of the NASA things were interesting. So overall, I really enjoyed the book. I think it did feel a little bit surface level at times, but sometimes you just want a good time, and this was a good time, and I really enjoyed. The ending was a bit of a cop-out for me, but that might just be me. But other than that, I think it was a very, very entertaining, very touching book. The book that I finished was Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle, and this was also, I think, nominated for the Booker Prize. And this is about under 18 boxing tournaments. And the thing that is interesting about this, so you go, like, it's divided in the different matches. So you have the bracket at the beginning of the book. Let's see if I can find it. You have the bracket at the beginning of the book, and then you follow each match, and then when these are finished, you follow the following until the winner is crowned. And you follow all of these girls and their lives and what boxing means to them within their lives. Some of them have harder lives than others, but for all of them, this very seemingly not very important tournament for anyone else means a lot to them, means the world to them. And you follow why, and you follow their worries and their problems, and it's such a smart way to tell a story like this. I don't know that I connected to all of them because of there were so many of them that it was a little bit difficult to keep them apart sometimes, but I think that the structure and the way that this is told was very interesting and very smart, and I really enjoyed it for that. Then the next book that I read was A Psalm for the Wild Build by Becky Chambers, and this was just very sweet. It's about a society in which kind of robots have asked humans to be independent, and humans have said yes, so the robots have kind of gone to the mountains to never be seen again, and they don't want to be contacted by the humans, they just want to be left alone, because they have gained consciousness and they don't want to serve the humans anymore. And then the humans have accepted that and have built a world around themselves without counting robots and without trying to build robots again to help them do things. And in this book, a robot has come to observe the humans, and he meets a monk that serves tea and tries to make people feel better by serving them tea and talking to them, kind of a psychologist more than a monk, to be honest. And they are trying to basically understand each other. Most of the book is just about them trying to understand what each other does and what why the differences between them are how they are, and why their lives and their worlds are completely different perceptions, but at the same time that's not wrong in any way, and they just connect with each other and want to be with each other. And it's not in a like romantic way, just in like a friend way. And it's just like really sweet and really wholesome, and I enjoyed it. The next book that I read was Night Beach by Rachel Yoder. I have read a few of these female rage books, and mom rage books at this point, and this was a little bit weirder because the woman in this one kind of morphs into a actual dog sometimes, and her son also wants to be a dog, and does like he wants to be walked with a leash, and he wants to eat from the floor and things like that, which are not very socially acceptable at points, and so she struggles with that, and her husband struggles with accepting that as well, but her husband is never home, so who cares, right? And never takes any responsibility. He's only home on the weekends, he's working all of the rest of the time, and he's living his life like he's free. So that's that, and I think it was fine. I think I prefer other books, and I'm also starting to get tired that most of these books, in most of these books, the man is an engineer that makes a lot of money, and the woman is an artist that has to live her passions because his job is more important, because he makes more money, blah blah blah. And although that is the dynamic for many people, I find that that's a cop-out, because we all know that that's not what this is about. The reason why women do most of labor is not because they're not engineers and it's not because they earn less money. There are many people, many people, me included, that in which the woman makes more money and has a more stable, more recognized, more whatever career, and still the child labor and the house labor is still not divided equally. So yeah, I'm a little bit tired of that trope in books like this, to be honest. But yeah, other than that, it was a fine example of that kind of trope if you like the weird in your books. Then the next book I finished was One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad, and this focuses mostly on the Palestine-Israel conflict right now, from the point of view of the US. So it mostly talks about how the US is reacting to that, and how the US is supporting or not supporting people, and how they are trying to censor what it said in the US about Palestine. That's that kind of thing. This was published, I think, in 2025. So it's still quite relevant, all of what he says, and it's very infuriating, and it's very yeah, very very relevant, and it's very important. I would have appreciated if the perspective was a little bit broader than just the US, but other than that, I think this is an important book, especially for people in the US, to kind of gain that knowledge and that feedback that maybe some people don't have. So I think it's a very important book, but I think it's also not widely applicable internationally necessarily. I mean, some of these things are happening in other places as well, but some of them aren't, and I think it is like, I feel like often books from the US are just very narrow on that US thing, and even if elements are similar in other countries, they don't talk about them. It's just like the US, and so that is a little bit off-putting sometimes for me, but other than that, it was a good book. And then the last book that I finished this month is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This was my Read Good challenge book for May, and I liked this. I think it was not maybe as engaging as I wanted it to be, but it was a lot more literary than I wanted it to, or that I expected it to be. Let's say, I thought this was going to be more young adult-ish because of the topics of the book. It's about a bunch of kids that are in a boat, I think, and the boat sinks, and then they basically are stuck in a desert island, and then all the book is about them in the desert island and how they first try to be civilized and just like they go wild at some point. And yeah, that's why I was expecting it to be younger, a bit more like Treasure Island sort of things, but it's quite literary and adult, and the topics are also very adult, and it's very gore at points. And yeah, I think it was a very interesting story to tell, and I appreciated it, but I didn't connect to the characters and the story and the place as much as I wanted it to. Those are all the books that I read in June. Let me know what you read in June, if you have read any of these, what you thought about them, and until next video, bye!